we are in a testing time for the retail sector with the ability to have citizens arrest laws coming into society, possibly. Here to talk more about that is CEO of Retail NZ. It's Carolyn Young. Welcome, Carolyn. It's a pleasure to speak with you today.
Kia ora, Blake. Thanks for having me. It's nice to be here.
So let's touch on those proposed citizens arrest laws. What were your thoughts when Minister Goldsmith proposed those? And are you supportive of them?
Well, I guess the first thing to say is that there is a citizens arrest law in place at the moment, which is enacted between 9 p.m. at night and 6 a.m. in the morning. So you can do a citizens arrest. It is relatively restricted. What has been proposed is much more liberal and has quite a number of risks and dangers with it. It enables any member of the public to undertake a citizen's arrest if they see someone that they think is performing an offence. They can use reasonable force to do so, and they're able to detain someone. So there's a couple of things with that. In a broad statement, members generally don't support citizens' arrest for a number of reasons. Firstly, we don't want shopkeepers don't want to have that kind of unsettlement in their store. They don't want people having a little bit of rough housing or anything like that happening in store. If someone is offending in their store, they do want to get them out and they want to be able to get their goods back, and they want to be able to trespass them, but they don't want to be able to detain them because they've got nowhere to do that. You don't want someone in handcuffs out the front of your building because it puts off other people coming in, and you also don't have anywhere in store that you want to put them, because if you put them out the back, then they're going to see what sits out the back and they'll get some ideas about breaking in out the back. Alongside that, a lot of people that are offending in store these days bring in weapons. Some are concealed and some are not. So if you approach someone, you're never sure what response you might get, whether they might pull out a knife. A number of occasions, guns have been presented in store in the last 12 to 18 months. So it is a much more dangerous environment that we're talking about. And a number of offenders also have a number of addictions. So they might be high on meth or some other things. And so you don't know how they might respond. And you're probably not going to get a normal response. Someone that's in an offending space is probably not going to give you the response that you would think would be reasonable. And so it's really tricky. And the key thing really about citizens arrest is that if you're asking your staff to undertake a citizens arrest, you're putting them in known danger. So you're saying to your staff, I want you to interact if you see something going wrong in store. It doesn't comply to the health and safety regulations where you're required to provide a safe work environment for your staff members, so that they should be able to come to work and go home and not be impacted negatively by their work environment. So, all of those reasons, it's not really a retail solution. Citizens arrest can be done by anyone, anywhere, anytime. So it could be done in a domestic situation, it could be done at a concert, it could be done at a sporting event, it could be done out on the street, any number of places it could be done. And it could be done in a retail store, but it is not a retail solution for retail crime. And it's not a preventative mechanism. And they're probably the key things for us, really, is keeping staff safe, looking at preventative measures rather than post measures. And we know that the police are really stretched in the work that they do, and it's really difficult for them to turn up to retail crime if it's just about shoplifting. So you've got a tool that someone's going to put in place, but there's no guarantee that the police will turn up. They have a wide range of other priorities where lives are in danger that they need to attend to first, and we understand that. So I think, if you're putting a tool in place, you need to know that it's going to be effective for the purpose that it's been derived for.
Then with all that, we've seen a lot of media conjecture around what the police are doing in retail and other places in the last week or so. So what improvements would you like to see the police make in the retail space, given the comments from places like the Green Party and other political organisations over the last week or so?
Yeah, I mean, it was quite contentious, right, what Tabitha Paul from the Green Party had said. We really support the work the police do and have done and continue to do. We know that they've got a really tough job. Retailers feel more safe and secure when there are police out on the beat as opposed to them being in the police station, because we know that it's a preventative measure. If people are thinking about offending and there's a couple of police officers walking down the road, or they've just seen some around the corner, they might think twice because they know that they'll be able to respond much sooner. So it provides a greater comfort to a retailer and customers that police are out, they're visible, they're there to protect society.
I'll hand over to Paul.
Out of curiosity, the retail sector has obviously had a really tough sort of half a decade with COVID and lockdowns, and then you sort of get back and the world seems to be going a little bit crazy. Is there a feeling of pessimism out there amongst the sector at the moment, or is it turning? Are we looking at a more optimistic outlook for people within the sector?
Yeah, look, Paul, it's been really tough, as you say, and it is quite tricky. So retailers are hoping that there's a bit more hope and optimism that things later in the year will improve. But right now, we're kind of still in the deep, dark difficulties of low trade. Sales are still down on the previous year, which are down on the previous year. So, we've had all of these years of difficulty. We're still seeing stores close. There's a lot of talk about what the economy's going to be like soon. And really, it's about how businesses can hang on, how they can be agile right now, what they need to do to adjust their I guess, priorities and what they sell and how they sell to a changing marketplace. And so there's a combination of people being optimistic about the future, but realistic that right now it's really tough. And trying to work out, how do I get through from now until July, August, September time.
When we go through a recession like we've just come out of, we tend to see those crime rates go up a little bit. There's a bit of a hand-in-hand issue going on there, which, right at the tail end of the last recession was when Paul Goldsmith got up and made his announcement. Is there a correlation in your mind to, the government reacting to what people see as a rise in crime to make this announcement about citizens' arrest, or do you think it's something that's been a little bit more planned out and it's just the timing might be come across as coincidental more than anything?
Well, we saw an uplift in crime post-COVID, when we came out of lockdown, and that's just continued on. So it has been a continuous sort of piece. And so, yes, it coincides at a time when there's been a recession, but it's actually not related to affordability. So we know that the people committing the crimes, they're not stealing to feed their family, because that's a different person. If someone's stealing to feed their family, they've got a loaf of bread and a pound of butter and a can of beans, a couple of things. They're just taking a few items. When people are stealing trolley loads of things and they're planned and they've got support people, that's organised and that's got a different feel about it. So, retail crime has been on the rise for 3 or 4 years now. It's been an issue with police and justice and, the government in general. We've been talking with them about retail crime. And the answer that this current government has got is that they formed a ministerial advisory group to provide some ideas around solutions. And, the change in citizens' arrest has come out of that. The chair of the ministerial advisory group, it's his pet project. It's something that he has been touting to various governments for a number of years, and he feels that it's a solution. I think that, one of the things that we really know about citizens' arrest is that when if you chase after someone, if you have a weapon that you're going to use to try and stop someone, you will get hurt. And we've seen instances where people have died as a result of them chasing after offenders. So, and that's because the offenders have got weapons. Someone got stabbed and died, and other people have been hit back and those sorts of things. So A little bit in terms of Minister Goldsmith's announcement, it's a bit about their strategy around how to solve and address retail crime, and it's a little bit about just the timing of where things come out.
How much of a concern is it when you hear citizens arrest powers, all that kind of stuff, and somebody like Brian Tamaki comes out and goes, this is really good for us?
Yeah, it's frightening, isn't it? If people take on that sort of strategy that they think, oh, great, we can kind of get in there and go and do something ourselves. That's not what we want, right? We're a progressive society. We want to really think about how we want to get on with each other in our community, make sure that we're accepting of all people. And I think when you've got sectors of the community that are not accepting of everyone, and they take an aggressive and at times a violent approach to addressing those issues in a really disruptive manner and not a courteous manner, I think it's a real concern. He did come out a bit later and saying he was only joking, but it's, first responses sometimes are the response that you really look back to see, what someone's really thinking.
He's very good at turning around afterwards and saying, oh, this is what I actually meant.
Yeah, it's sort of almost like a cover-up. It's sort of like he sort of doesn't realise how he's come across, so then he has to correct it, but actually his position probably still hasn't changed.
Yeah. Changing tact ever so slightly, I want to have a chat about paywave fees, because I see that's been making the news a little bit lately as well. Banks charge a little bit more per transaction fee, and it makes sense that retailers pass that on. But they're not popular. I know fees are ever popular. I'm kind of curious what the Retail NZ position is on what they would like to see happen around that area.
Yeah, look, it's a super complex space, right? Because the merchant payment fee is a fee that anyone that has let's call it an EFTPOS terminal, because it makes most people understand what that means. If you've got an EFTPOS terminal, you're called a merchant, and those merchant fees, they're made up about 5 or 6 different fees accumulated in there that merchants have to pay. So the Commerce Commission at the moment is undergoing some consultation around what that space looks like. Our position effectively is that the current legislation allows retailers or any merchant to charge a surcharge to recover the fee that they're paying that is being charged by the banks and the credit card companies. And so we support retailers having the ability to choose if they want to charge that fee. And there's a little bit of a difference between hospitality and retail. So we did a survey of our members, and we found that 24.6% of members charge a surcharge, and therefore, 75.4% don't. And hospitality is probably the other way around. We know when we go out to a cafe, most cafes, if you get a coffee or lunch or something, they charge a surcharge, and it's they have a different strategy. So really what we want to see, the Commerce Commission is really keen to get the fee for merchants down to 1% or lower. And they have come out with some quite strong recommendations in some parts of that merchant service fee called the interchange. And they're wanting to regulate that piece. And so that will make a difference for everyone. And we agree with what they're trying to do, but one of the things that we say is that they need to go further. They should regulate the total fee. If they believe that they want the fee to be less than 1%, they should regulate the maximum fee that can be charged, because we believe that, as big business is able to do, that over time, those fees will just creep back up and we'll be back to where we are right now. So we are supportive of the Commerce Commission's recommended changes of reducing the fees and regulating more. They are going to put some stronger regulations in around surcharging. We've suggested that they do that at the same time. At this stage, they're looking to do it as an additional piece later, so maybe next year or at some point. So the one thing we know about surcharging, it's not a great customer experience, right? When you get to the till, you're excited about what you're going to buy, and the next thing you know, you're having to pay an additional, 1.5%, 2.5%, sometimes more. And that's just doesn't feel quite right. But, retailers and merchants are entitled to charge a surcharge to recoup that fee. So it's a very complicated space, and it's a very complex area, and small businesses don't have the ability to negotiate with banks because they don't have the buying power like the really big guys do. So they're a price taker, not a price maker. And so they're just absorbing all of these fees. And if the fees go up, they can't negotiate. If they can't try and go somewhere else, it's probably pretty much the same. So it's a really tough place for SMEs. And we know that in New Zealand, there's lots and lots, there's 27,000 retailers in New Zealand, and the majority of those are small and medium-sized enterprises. So they're the ones that are really struggling and really hurting.
Blake, I'll pass back to you.
One final question from me before we let you go. So you talk about the surcharges and pay wave and all that kind of stuff. As a disabled person, I've noticed a high increase in people not even offering pay wave, and it can become quite an issue for our disabled community, because some of us don't, most of us do, but there are a portion of us who don't have the luxury of having a caregiver to support us. So we rely a lot on, I don't have the issue, but I have a lot of clientele that do, that have the issue that they're not able to use a card by themselves and need to rely on pay wave. So for the businesses that don't, are you trying to encourage them to offer pay wave?
Look, it is a really important question that you raised, because it is incredibly important that the whole society are able to make payments in a way in which they want to make payments. So if somebody wants to pay with cash, we want to make sure that merchants or that businesses will accept cash. A number of hospitality businesses don't take cash anymore. So, but that is a way, and it's a legal tender. It's a way in which a lot of people transact businesses. For people with a disability, as you mentioned, if you're vision impaired or if you've got an intellectual disability, sometimes you'll be reliant on other people to make that transaction on your behalf. And I think it is really important that, Payments New Zealand is going through a review of the current infrastructure that we have. And one of the pieces that they're looking at is how to make sure that the whole community, including those with a disability and an impairment, will be able to have trust and confidence in the system and enable them to make a payment in a way that's effective and efficient for them. So there are some measures being looked at the moment. The wheels move a little bit slowly, Blake, but certainly really fully understand the challenges that you have if you have an impairment, whether it's a visual impairment, a physical impairment, or an intellectual impairment. I think it's really important that everyone in the community is looked after.
Well, thank you for joining us today. It was a pleasure to speak with you about retail and all those sorts of things, and you're welcome back anytime.
Kia ora, Blake and Paul. Thank you so much for inviting me on. It's been great fun talking to you. I'm happy to come back anytime.
Fantastic. Thank you. In record. Hey, thanks for checking out today's video. Make sure you like, share, subscribe so you get more updates as you go along. We deal with these guys for the rest of the year.